is for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to the witnesses for testifying before us today. I appreciate your time. In alignment with this committee's continued effort for innovation in the higher education policy space, I want to hear from some of you about the ideas that this committee is considering in their Higher Education Act reauthorization. Dr. Gillen, I really appreciated your testimony that you submitted in writing. I can relate to that as both a parent of a college student and as a former graduate student who took out some student loans to afford my graduate education. When I submitted the paperwork to get a student loan, I was asked a question, how much does it cost? And then the answer was, oh, we'll pay whatever the cost is. So I'm hearkening to your Bowen's Law that you reference. In the quest for excellence, prestige, and influence, there is virtually no limit to the amount of money an institution could spend for seemingly fruitful educational ends. And under Bowen's Laws, government subsidies don't reduce the price to the consumer because the subsidy allows colleges to raise and spend more money. Under Bowen's Laws, subsidies have the counterintuitive effect of increasing the cost of providing the good or service rather than reducing the price of the good or service for the consumer. That has certainly been my experience, both as a student loan borrower, a parent, and a taxpayer. So thank you for your research. I do want to ask you about the PLUS loan program. The PLUS loan program allows graduate students and parents of undergraduate students to borrow nearly unlimited sums, as the only cap on the amount of loan someone can take is whatever the college says it costs to go there. Unsurprisingly, multiple studies conducted by economists and policy experts across the political spectrum conclude that these loans have substantially contributed to the rapid inflation of college prices over the last few decades. The result has been billions in loan forgiveness for graduate students and financial ruin for some low-income parents. What, if any, justification is there to continue the PLUS loan program?
I don't think we need the PLUS loan program because it's duplicative of the Stafford loan program. So we've already got the Stafford loan program. If we want to make some changes to that, we can. And the Stafford loan program is better. It's got annual and aggregate limits. It's got safeguards. That's completely lacking for the PLUS, both on the grad and the parent side. I've seen some people argue that the Parent Plus was originally only designed to allow people to borrow up to expected family contribution. That got lost by the wayside. And then originally grad students couldn't take out Plus loans, but then they were allowed to because we thought it would create money that we could then spend. And that hasn't worked out either. So this has kind of been a disaster of a program from the start.
I'm glad that you mentioned the Stafford loan program. If we were to eliminate the PLUS program, what reforms to borrowing limits under the Stafford loan program should we examine?
So right now, a graduate student can borrow up to $20,500 from the Stafford loan program. There are probably a few cases where that's not enough. So I'm thinking something like medical school tends to be very expensive. You might want to increase the borrowing limit in special cases like that. I would also recommend adjusting the aggregate limit based on the credential as well. Okay. It doesn't make sense to me to have the $138,500 limit for, doctoral degree, which can take up to a decade, and also a master's degree, which some of them will take a year.
Okay, thank you. And then do you think the potential elimination of PLUS loans for graduate students would make higher education less accessible for low-income students looking to further their education? If we eliminate PLUS loans for graduate students, would that make the education less available to low-income students?
I don't think so. So only about 1/6 of graduate students even take out Grad Plus loans. So most of the borrowing is already done in the Stafford program. So you aren't going to see much decline in access there. And particularly for graduate students, the plus loans aren't, or the parent plus loans are not an issue. So if there is any decline in access due to getting rid of Parent Plus, that can be easily remedied.
Okay. And finally, Dr. Leshley, or Mr. Leshley, it's not often we hear of a new accreditor forming. What were some of the reasons you decided to create the Post-Secondary Commission?
A lot of the motivation originated in my colleagues and I observing and being frustrated by the lack of attention paid paid to magnificent open admission institutions that serve high-need students. In these places, remarkable results can hide in plain sight unless we pay attention carefully to measuring their contributions. The inverse is when selective institutions are reflexively applauded for the outcomes of their students, even though that may have mostly to do with these very particular admissions offices that they have. So the origin of this idea, Congresswoman, was to take very seriously how to measure fairly and precisely the contributions that institutions make to this thing that almost every student needs so desperately, which is a better economic future. And nowhere is that more important than in institutions that serve high-need students.
I agree. Thank you so much, Madam Chairman. I yield back.